Welcome to Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the meaning and the power of the most important story in business. The one that answers why someone should buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. Or in the case of today's guest, why somebody should donate or volunteer. More about that in a minute. This story is the most important story because it answers those questions. And at WordWrite, we call it your capital S story, because answering those questions stands above all the other stories that you might need to share as a leader of an organization. In each episode, we feature guests who have great insights on organizational storytelling, who can share their experiences and key learnings to help you and your organization do a better job of sharing your capital S story to deliver remarkable results. Today, we're honored to have Amy Kienle as our guest. Amy is the CEO of the YMCA of Greater Pittsburgh. Amy and I have known each other for a while, so it's a special pleasure to have her here. And indeed, the Y has been a client of our firm, WordWrite, since late 2016. A lot of our clients, probably all of them, we love working with them because they're not just about doing business, they're about changing people's lives. And I certainly hope that comes through in our discussion with Amy today. It's interesting. Amy's been in Pittsburgh for about 2 years now, and she has a very fascinating background. The letter Y is behind her name throughout her career, but she's held a variety of positions in the Y since I guess really since, she'll tell us more about this in a second, won't you, Amy? Since you were a teenager, really, you've been involved with the Y. And that led to a succession of leadership positions and ultimately running YMCA associations in the Southeast and more recently here in Pittsburgh. I'm just thrilled to have you on today, Amy. As we get started here, is there anything that I missed in your background that you would like to call out?
No, I think you pretty much summed it up. I did grow up going to the Y and absolutely love my current job and all of the jobs leading up to where I am today.
Now, because we know each other, and this is not on your official biography on the YMCA website, didn't you have a parent who was also involved in Y leadership?
I did. My dad was actually a YMCA CEO for 35 years and had a wonderful YMCA career, which is why from a very early age, I started getting involved in the YMCA and all of its programs and services. So I'm really thrilled to be somewhat following in his footsteps.
You're charting your own course, right, Amy?
Yeah, that's true.
You definitely are. You definitely are. But I think that's great because it's a lot of folks when they're growing up, they see what their parents do and they say to themselves, "I'm going to do anything but that." Right? It just seems to be, I don't know, teenage rebellion or something like that. But you saw something in what your dad did that led you to your lifetime careers. That's pretty awesome. Now, when we have an episode, we always ask our guests about their interpretation of the capitalist story. And Amy, as you heard me share just a couple minutes ago, it's this story that stands above the rest and answers why somebody would, in a for-profit, buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. And certainly in a nonprofit, as I suggested in the intro to this episode, also, it's about finding donors who are committed to the organization and volunteers, because an organization as large as the Y, and we're going to talk more about this, relies on an army of volunteers in order to get its work done. Of those 4 questions that I suggested, which of those is most important for you in the Y right now?
I would say I think probably work for the Y. I think that we're in a mode of growing our organization, both programmatically and our services that we're providing. Of course, we're always looking for great volunteers and we're always looking for amazing donors. But one of the things that we really are interested in doing is spreading the word about joining our organization and as employee and aligning with our mission in whatever way people feel motivated to do so.
You know, Amy, one of the most interesting things that I've seen recently when experts, and certainly as a leader in business, I'm aware of it, but I'm not an expert. Millennials and Gen Z there seems to be a strong thread in many young people entering the workforce, a desire, if you will, to be engaged with an organization as an employer that has a mission. What what would you say is your key message to younger people about why work for the why?
Well, I would absolutely agree with that assessment. We're definitely seeing um, many of our younger employees, and the YMCA is a in the country, the YMCA as a movement is the largest employer of young people, particularly in their first jobs. And we take that job pretty seriously, trying to equip young people on how to um, what's expected of them at work and what they should expect from their employers as well. So I do think that you really hit the nail on the head with that statement, Paul, for sure. I do think that the YMCA has a great mission, and particularly in our youth development work, we're really finding a lot of younger people gravitating toward working with kids, whether that's at our resident or traditional summer camp program or our before and after school programs or our summer day camp program. And then also we have early learning from infant to pre-K care. And so a lot of our younger employees are gravitating toward those jobs where they can really help the next generation of kids grow and thrive.
That's amazing. When I think about jobs for young people, I think about fast food and flipping burgers. And it just never really occurred to me, even as much as I know about the why from having worked with you folks, that is a really, really telling statement that the why across the country, and I don't expect you to have all the statistics at hand, but Amy, how many local whys do we have across the country roughly?
Oh, there's over 800 individual associations across the country. Right here in Pennsylvania, we have 57. So it's, we're all over the world, and as a matter of fact, we're an international global company. We're affiliated with YUSA, so of course that's in the United States. And a lot of the statistics are specifically for the United States, such as us being the number one employer. I keep thinking Chick-fil-A's got to be running us for our money
Well,
on that one, but we're
you
still
would
holding
think.
the number one position.
Well, there are jobs that younger teenagers can grow into with the why. For instance, you mentioned summer camps. As we record this episode, it is indeed summer camp season. And you can be a relatively younger teenager and be a counselor at a Y camp, correct?
Absolutely. And that's really where I started my career at the YMCA, was an after school counselor and a summer day camp counselor. And I remember for summer day camp having that kindergarten group and just loving working with them during the summer and seeing their eyes light up when they achieved something for the first time, or seeing two people who never even knew each other that by the end of the first day of camp, they're best friends and locked arm in arm. It's a really amazing, experience as a young person to see the influence and the potential of all of these young kids and how you can help them, learn and make friends.
Mm-hmm. That is really a great example from your personal experience. I love that. And we want to dig more into that for sure in a few minutes here. One of the other things about storytelling, it's the purpose for our podcast, because we believe so strongly in the importance of that capital S story. Uh, our take on storytelling is not always the same as everybody else. So I always like to ask our guests, when I say the word storytelling, what does that mean to you? There are no
Hmm.
long answers.
What does that mean to me? I mean, I would say authentically sharing, either my own personal experiences or sharing the experiences of others to help people better understand or connect to the work that we do. Um, I know this is only a half hour episode, but you could get me going and I could talk for a really long time about all the stories that I've accumulated over my last 28 years in the YMCA. And some of them are my own growth and development. Some of them
Right.
are my own kids and their achievements and their experiences. Some of them I've personally been engaged with other people's stories, and some I just hear through the grapevine. But I think the YMCA is such a wonderful organization to be a part of, because I do think that we're really well positioned as an extension of, in some cases, an extension of people's families, in a position to really help celebrate, people's achievements, and when they're really high, and when they're they're doing a great job, or they've experienced something that's life-changing in a very positive way, or they've had a goal and they finally reached that goal. But then also to help lift people up and to serve them in very difficult times. And, I could share my own personal stories where, I was on the high part of that roller coaster, but then also stories when
Mm.
I've experienced the low times in life and also helped others in their low times of life. And that's, I think, the beauty of being part of the YMCA.
That's one of the great differences of the Y. A lot of folks will lump the Y, generally speaking, and like you, I'm not originally from Pittsburgh, and my young Y experience, being the oldest of four kids, all of whom learned to swim at RY, right? Got my junior life saving there. Went through the guides program, and of course, our daughters went through the same program for girls. So, a lot of those stories stick with you for a lifetime, right? I mean, it really is a rich tapestry that we really want to dig into. And folks, we're going to do that in just a minute. We're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be right back with Amy Kienle, CEO of the YMCA of Greater Pittsburgh. Don't go away. Folks, thanks for being here for this episode of Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business, the one that answers why somebody would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, partner with you, or in the case of today's guest, donate or volunteer for you if you're a nonprofit. So welcome back, Amy Kienle, the CEO of the YMCA of Greater Pittsburgh. Amy, in the second half of the episode here, I really want to dig into the why and your role at the Y. I think it's a great story. So I think a lot of folks who are familiar with the Y will think of the Y from the standpoint of the delivery of programs, right? Whether it's learning to swim or summer day camps or after school care, et cetera, et cetera. What does the CEO of a Y do?
Oh boy, that's a big question. Um, what does the CEO of the YMCA do? Well, I would say, I inspire and I lead,
Mm,
and I am inspired and I lead. I work with all of our volunteers, our board of directors, our board of trustees, our advisory boards.
mm,
I work with all of the leadership staff. I want to make sure that everything that we say we do, we can actually follow through and do and execute and keep that promise to our community. If we say we're going to take good care of your kids, I want to make sure that we have good leaders in place, good systems in place to make sure that that actually happens. You mentioned learning to swim at the Y. 1 in 3 people in the United States learn to swim at the YMCA.
no
And
kidding.
it's a heavy responsibility, because being in the water could be a very dangerous situation in just a moment, just a second, actually. And so really making sure that we train and equip our staff to deliver not just the programs and services that people think of at the Y, but the quality of the programs and services that people think of when they think of the Y. And that ranges from housing to childcare, to swim lessons, to camp, overnight camp.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, we're in the season right now of camp, and I lose the most sleep during the time that we've got young kids in our care overnight at our traditional camp, because it's a big responsibility.
It really is. And I think this is true for most people with any organization or institution that they engage with. They see what they see, but they don't understand the full picture. Could you give our listeners just a sense of how big the Y of Greater Pittsburgh is, how long it's been around, how many branches you have, camps, staff, etc.?
Sure. So currently, the footprint of our organization is 6 facilities that you would typically think of at the YMCA. However, I would like to point out some of those nuances in a minute.
Yes.
But there are 3 inside the city and then 3 kind of more suburban locations in the greater Pittsburgh area. And then we have 2 camps. One is a traditional overnight resident camp, primarily serving youth. That's Camp Conaquee Spencer. A lot of folks in Pittsburgh will know Camp Conaquee Spencer. And the other is our Deer Valley Family Camp down in Somerset County, where we have multiple generations at a time come and experience family-oriented programming together. In addition to that, right now we've got 14 summer day camp locations, and we have 3 early learning locations from infant to pre-K. During the school year, we'll switch from summer day camp to before and after school. Last year, during the school year, we had 28 before and after school locations. So we are serving many of our communities in the greater Pittsburgh area.
That's amazing, Amy. I mean, it's a multi-million-dollar organization, right?
It is. We're a $30 million organization based on budget revenue. And in the United States, that puts us about the 45th largest Y in the country.
Amazing. Truly amazing. Give us a sense, again, delivering programs, whether it's exercise programs in a branch location or staff at the camps or other programs that the Y conducts, which there are so many. How many full-time staff, how many part-time staff does the Y have in any given year?
So during our peak summer season, which again, that's kind of where we are in this particular point in time, we have about 900 staff total. 150 of them approximately are full-time. So we do rely very heavily on part-time and seasonal staff members to really execute our mission in our community. Again, many of those are working with kids. And as you mentioned, group exercise, sometimes we have an employee that comes in and teaches 2 classes a week, and that fulfills their personal mission and helps our organization as well. So 150 full-time, but 900 total staff.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think a lot of people don't understand about the Y is the part of the mission that's committed to delivering services to communities that otherwise wouldn't have them. This is not any disrespect to for-profit organizations that operate gyms or whatever, but the Y mission is a little bit different. You mentioned, for example, that the Y has 3 locations in the city. Could you talk a little bit about those locations and the kinds of programs or services that they offer?
Sure. The 3 locations are the Thelma Leavitt YMCA, our Homewood Brushton YMCA, and the Allegheny YMCA. All 3 of them are very different community hubs for their local communities. The Thelma Leavitt YMCA is located in the Hill District, and it opened about 3 years ago. About 11 years ago. However, prior to that, it had a presence in the Hill District community for over 100 years. It was part of the Center Avenue YMCA before we built the standalone Thelma Leavitt YMCA. We have folks from all walks of life come into this facility, whether it's they're training for a triathlon or they're trying to lose weight, or they just need a place to come together in community. And we have a great partnership with Macedonia Face actually for this particular location. The second is the Thelma Leavitt. I'm sorry, that's the Thelma Leavitt YMCA. The second is the Homewood Brushton YMCA, which we rely very heavily on community grants and foundations to support the program deliverables that are happening at this location. We primarily serve youth. However, it is a full facility open to community members as well. We have amazing programs going on there, primarily related to arts, visual, and arts and also STEAM programming. So science, we're actually just had a drone program where kids got certified to fly their own drones. They're learning about gardening. I was just there yesterday. Some amazing programming happening there, giving those kids an opportunity to learn whole new skills that they don't necessarily get exposed to otherwise. And then the Allegheny YMCA, we're actually in a $23 million capital fundraising effort for this location because it's a 96-year-old building. This is an amazing facility that not only has the typical or traditional YMCA component to it, but once the renovation is over, we're also going to have an early learning center serving that Northside community. And currently we have 55 residents living there. It is a single resident occupancy location. So we have 105 rooms. And after the renovation, we'll have 89 rooms. We are lowering the occupancy so that we can have private restrooms and add some laundry facilities. But this is a really important component of how we serve our community, is providing affordable housing to these individuals that call the Allegheny Y their home.
That's an amazing part of the story that I don't think most people realize. Some of the men who live there might otherwise not have a place to live if it weren't for the Y making this commitment. One of the great things that the Y has done in recent years here in Pittsburgh is partnering with Action Housing, which is another great nonprofit and which is focused on helping people be housed in order to ensure that folks have a place to live. Could you tell us just a little bit about that partnership?
Oh, absolutely. And you're right on, Paul. There's no way we could do this project without the partnership with Action Housing. Several years ago, we did partner with them on the Center Avenue renovation, which is exclusively housing now. And we had so much fun with that. We brought the band back together and they're helping us with the Allegheny YMCA. They are truly dedicated to affordable housing in Pittsburgh and really solving the unhoused problem that we have. And we recognize we're a critical part of that solution. So they've come alongside of us. Obviously, we're not the experts, they are, and it's really great to have a partner that understands all of the nuances of affordable housing, as well as all of the connections and the networks that need to be in place in order to make this project come to fruition. So they've been amazing. Larry Swanson and Lena and their whole team over at Action Housing are true partners in this work for us.
I think I'm going to have them on the podcast in the near future. Don't want to talk around somebody who's who's been such a big contributor. But speaking of that, one of the great blessings for the community of Pittsburgh is that there are so many active nonprofits. Could you kind of give us a sense of how the Y is different from some of the other major nonprofits in the region?
Well, I do think that the YMCA, I think, is a little bit unique in how we serve. We have programs and services from infants all the way up to, we at the Y, we affectionately call it cradle to grave, where we really have programs and services that serve all. I think that there's all of the nonprofits in the greater Pittsburgh community are doing important work. And as a matter of fact, we partner with many of them to make sure that we can deepen and broaden the impact that each nonprofit is having in our community. So I think that there's incredible work. I do think that the YMCA is unique in our programs and services, how we offer them, the financial assistance that we provide for people that want to be part of our organization but may not be able to afford it. There are a lot of ways, I think, that make us different, but also we are stronger when we work together, and I recognize that as well.
Yeah, I one of the things I know, it's Pittsburgh is a four-season community, right? So it is summer now, and summer is festival time and event time. And I know one of the things that you've made a focus in the 2 years you've been here, and this is of course coming into fruition right now because it is that season, is to connect with other organizations. And you've made it a point to attend other nonprofits events. You've been involved in Pride Month events, et cetera, et cetera. Could you talk about a little bit about why you as a leader feel that that's important?
Well, I would say I have two things. One is I thrive on that. I love being in community. I love being with people. I love hearing from people. They share their own story with me when I'm out in the community, whether it's related to the why or not. Many times it is when they find out who I am, but I love being part of community. And secondly, I would say, I think that it's important for the why to be present,
Mm.
to advocate, to support the community. We can't be all things to all people, but we can come alongside in many cases, and try to help support a positive impact. And I think we can't do that if we just strictly stay within the four walls of our own buildings.
Well, that gives me the opportunity to ask you about one of the programs that's been very active in the last few years, Y on the Fly. Can you just share a little bit with our listeners about that? Because I think a lot of people, when they think about the Y, they think about a building and bricks and mortar. I mean, you've given some examples already with the before and after school programs, et cetera, where that's not what the Y is. But there's a specific program called Y on the Fly that directly addresses this by being out in the community.
Yes, and I think it really became prevalent, and the value of it really became exponentially important during COVID.
Right.
And coming right out of COVID when a lot of organizations hadn't ramped back up their programs and services. And so really it was our effort to get back out into communities, either where the YMCA used to be or the YMCA has not been before, and meet people where they are. It's one of those things where you have to go where community is, and you have to go where kids are, and primarily our Y on the Fly program is targeted toward kids. And so
Mhm.
that program is literally a van that goes out into the community with staff members, games and activities, as well as healthy snacks, educational materials, and goes into communities where there aren't Ys or there aren't programs, and facilitates activities for kids. It's kind of like camp in a box,
Yeah.
where you can take physical activities and educational materials and help kids in communities where they can't physically get to a YMCA location, or potentially can't get to the library or can't get to a school during the summer. And where do we meet them but in their neighborhood, on their streets, and take the program to them.
That is just that is awesome. And I think that is, there are a few things out of COVID that are good that have changed the dynamic, and I think that's one of them for sure. You've already kind of given our listeners a sense of this, and I'm sure that you come across so many. But if you'd be willing to share just a recent success story or example of how you think the Y is making a difference, I think our listeners would really appreciate that.
Well, I can tell you, today is the 3-year anniversary of a really scary incident that occurred at our YMCA, um, where an 8-year-old had a brain aneurysm. And it happened during summer day camp, and our staff members intervened in a way that truthfully saved his life. And um, I just got a text message from his mother telling her, her telling me how much she appreciates and loves me and loves the YMCA. But she had her child in a non-YMCA summer camp for the first couple of weeks of camp, and she really felt like she was not aware of the fact that we had financial assistance. And so she felt like she couldn't afford the YMCA camp, even though she was not happy with where she was. She kept telling, she told me later, every time I dropped Alex off and every time I picked him up, nobody called him by name. The staff were on their phones. I didn't feel like he was as safe as I wanted him to be, but I knew about the Y, and I knew that I wanted him at the Y, but I didn't think I could afford it. Of course,
Wow.
we offer financial assistance for folks like Maria and her son Alex. But in our care that day, after she moved him to our program, he suffered from this brain aneurysm, which is obviously a very rare medical incident that occurred. And his story is such a wonderful outcome. And I think it's a wonderful outcome because we had trained our staff to handle emergencies such as the one that Alex experienced, communicate with each other, jump in right away, work closely with medical providers, all of the things that have to happen right when you have that type of emergency. There's a if one thing happens, there's a likelihood that the outcome is very different. And in Alex's case, it was a wonderful outcome. And I know that that's an extreme example. There are so many things that we do every day that positively impact members. And that's even, somebody coming into the Y and us knowing them by name and greeting them by name and making them feel like they have a sense of belonging when they get there. I think it's everything in between.
Wow, Amy, that is so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's been a delight to have you on this episode of Storylines Live. How can our listeners reach you and the Y if they're interested in following up?
Well, you can come to our website and you can get connected with me or any other program or service or location that you're interested in connecting with. And that's the YMCA of Greater Pittsburgh.org. So we would love to hear from you and however we can help.
That's great. I would also say look for the Y on socials, YMCA of Greater Pittsburgh. They have very active and great social presence. And because it is summer camp season, there have been some nice images and other things out there about summer camp season. Amy, thanks again for being here. We really enjoyed our conversation. It's a great honor to work with you and your team at the Y to make such differences in people's lives. Folks, I also want to thank you for listening to this episode of Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important organizational story, the one that answers why someone would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, partner with you, or as we learned today, donate or volunteer with you. Thanks again for being here, and we'll see you on our next episode.